the news that Andy Jassy was ordering everybody back into the office 5 days a week from January.
We think that our teams are more innovative, and particularly as we really think about how do we want to disrupt and we want to invent on behalf of our customers, we find that there is no substitution for doing that in person.
What?
Just the creative energy and how fast you're able to iterate when you're sitting there writing on a whiteboard, or you're talking to people in the cubicle next to you, or you're running into people that are in a different department. There is just that exchange doesn't happen when you're remote. It's very hard to impart that in the same way in a remote workforce. And so, we tried 3 days a week first, and then what happened is Bob would come in on Monday and Sally would come in on Tuesday, and we kind of didn't accomplish what we wanted, because it's really that in-person collaboration that we wanted. We think that that is important to our customers. We think that's important to our future innovation and the culture of our company. It doesn't mean that that's the only way to run a company. It doesn't mean that that's the only decision you can make, but it's the decision that we're making. And so if it's not for you, then that's okay. You can go and find another company if you want to.
Wow. Stats have shown that work from home has increased productivity and also profits for a lot of companies. Now, obviously, you can attribute it to the fact that companies got stimulus packages. But on top of that is that companies didn't have the need for office spaces. Office space is expensive. Now, if you can get rid of that entirely, that substantially cuts down on the cost. People are a lot more happier. You'll have a lot more of a happy staff. They're going to work as hard as they can for you just so that they can continue this type of model for themselves. People are now looking for alternative places to go and find work that offer these perks instead of coming back to the office. And I frankly don't blame them. Let me read the comments here. So what they really mean is, we want to control you. We want to be able to see exactly what people are doing with those productive hours. Because when you're sitting there in the office, someone is able to see exactly what you're doing. You're putting in work, so they can able to monetize and see the value of your productivity. But if you're working from home, how are we able to see exactly what you're doing? What's the productivity to that? Someone says so I can go to an office to sit on a Zoom meeting all day long. That's pretty much the same situation. We have to justify all management salaries. By this logic, I should shop in person and not via Amazon. That is a great point. Today we're diving into one of the most hotly debated topics in the corporate world: return to office mandates. It's a work version of the party's over, folks. Pack up your pajamas and get back to the office.
I cannot believe this shit.
And guess who's cracking out the whip? You know it. Amazon, the one that's able to get your package within 2 hours, is now enforcing the idea of coming back to the office. Other companies are going to start enforcing this idea as well. We have had a few people talk about it, like Elon Musk, and a few other CEOs might take initiative towards this.
There are some exceptions, but I kind of think that the whole notion of work from home is a bit like the people that come fix your house. They can't work from home, but you can. People should get off the goddamn moral high horse with the work from home bullshit.
Now, the tech giant is enforcing stricter in-office policies, sparking discussions about productivity, company culture. But now we're having employees pushing back against this. So what's driving the shift? And what does it mean for the future of work from home? We obviously do have some people trying to push towards the hybrid model, whereby you have a few days in the office, having it where it balances both the needs for the employer and the employee. Others are trying to substitute it for a 4-day work week, which is not too bad, but I don't know how you all feel about it. Let me know down in the comments. But we're going to look at some videos and see exactly why all this is happening.
So this article right here, just absolutely hits the nail on the head. They're talking about companies who are doing return to office, but they're doing it specifically instead of a layoff. They're trying to get people to quit. About 90% of companies are going to do some sort of return to office in 2024. So this isn't new. One of the companies that is probably doing this is AT&T. They have 60,000 managers in 50 states saying come back into the office, but only at 9 locations. Ooh. So it's very specific and strategic.
That's messed up. So if you're not in any of those states and you can't come back, now you have to relocate with your entire family to a whole new place just to go back to the office. It's kind of ridiculous. It's a lot to ask for people, especially if you've already rooted your home and family in a specific town and now you have to move over. It's not looking good. But this lady's experience says it all.
My company is mandating return to office after many years fully remote, and people want to know why I'm so mad about it. Maybe it's because today I sat in a meeting for over an hour while I listened to the CEO and senior executives brag about record growth, record sales, record everything. Meanwhile, in the past 4 years, we have only gotten raises for 2 of those years. Raises that do not keep up with inflation. I was in a meeting with the CEO where he was working remotely from a hotel, but I'm expected to drive over an hour every day to do the same clickety-clacking that I can do right here from my house. One of those senior executives bragged about all the traveling he's been able to do. Meanwhile, my family's barely scraping by. Return to office will cost me and my family over $13,000 a year. It's a pay cut. Continuing the work from home culture that we've had for the entire 7 years I've been with this company cost the company literally $0. It cost them $0 to keep us happy, but it will cost me $13,000 to commute. So if you're wondering why I'm mad about return to office, this is why.
$13,000? That's a heavy toll to pay. And people are barely scraping by with high cost of living. I mean, if you're already living somewhere where it's cheap and then now you have to commute to somewhere where the cost of living is going to increase, cost of products, the rent, just so you can keep your job, it's going to be very tough. Especially if your company has been having remote work for such a long time. All of a sudden to now up and change it, it makes it super difficult. And I know some companies were offering perks around it, but I think it takes away from the fact that a lot of people really want to spend time with their family. You're spending 8 hours a day at work. You're barely seeing your family. That's a lot of time that you don't get back. Now, we do have another one from a CEO. I think his perspective was very interesting to hear what he said.
All right, you want to know the real reason why companies are demanding a return to office? We all hate this topic, but this might be helpful if you're trying to argue for your position to remain remote. So it all has to do with productivity versus efficiency. Real quick, I am Eric, and I'm the founder of a startup called Clips. It's like a social network for your calendar. You connect with other people, and then when you go to schedule a meeting, you see where everyone is available. Key thing, it is not a productivity tool, okay? So anyway, back to this issue. Companies are obsessed with productivity, right? Not efficiency. And the distinction is all around inputs and outputs. Productivity, yes, it wants a lot of outputs, right? But it also wants a lot of inputs. To be productive is to produce a lot. And in the minds of executives or this kind of shareholder-driven economy, everyone is obsessed with making sure that while you are working, you are producing, right? Efficiency, on the other hand, is all about output divided by input. Okay, so think of a simple equation, right? Like you produce 6 things. Let's say it takes you 6 hours. So the outcome of that, or the output, is 1, right? 6 things, 6 hours, 6 divided by 6. If it only takes you 1 hour, then the output is 6 divided by 1, or 6 times the output, right? Extremely efficient. So let me land the plane here. This is why this matters. When you talk about efficiency, companies, what they hear, executives, senior management, etc., what they hear is layoffs.
Oh.
Think of Facebook or Meta's year of efficiency. Management structure, we're going to make everything flat. We're going to streamline. No. They laid off 20,000 people. So why is that though? Because the market doesn't know how to price or value inputs that are efficient. Because what this means is idle time, basically, right? If it takes you 1 hour to do the 6 things, and it used to take you 6 hours, what do you do with those 5 hours? How do we price it? How do we understand that, from an economic standpoint? So this is the conundrum and the conflict between, worker and owner. So if you're trying to have these conversations, one suggestion would be to talk about it in terms of productivity. Speak their language. Don't say, oh, I'm more efficient at home. Say, I'm more productive at home. I get, I'm working the whole time, but I don't have any distractions, so I get to work the whole time, and I get to produce all these things. If you say I'm more efficient at home, I have less distractions, so I'm more efficient. And by the way, it helps me go get my kids. They don't care about that. They don't want to hear that, right? But maybe there's a chance you could talk in terms of productivity.
I mean, it makes sense. You want to speak their language. How do you equate productivity? At the office, you can literally have people micromanage that and be like, well, he needs to do this, you do that, you do this, and you can actually watch people putting in work. But then when you're working from home, you can't really see it because who knows how much time he's putting on work. So now when people work from home, you can actually finish the work a lot earlier, go and get stuff done like your kids, laundry, do whatever you need. And I think that's the aspect that they're not able to see.
Guys, the fight over return to office mandates continues, and if you're working from home right now, this Wall Street Journal article is a complete wake-up call. The headline is, companies are done negotiating return to office mandates and some people are losing their jobs over it. Let's get into it. Okay, so a couple of key takeaways. Return to office is here to stay. You've heard me talk about Amazon, Starbucks, Boeing, other major employers are enforcing strict return to office policies, and non-compliance is leading to terminations, severance packages, and layoffs, and sneaky layoffs. The other big thing is the numbers aren't lying, right? Remote jobs are dwindling. Only 8% of jobs on LinkedIn are remote now compared to 18% in 2022. And these roles are incredibly competitive with 40% of applicants vying for them. Jeez. And my very good friend Dan Kaplan was quoted in this article, and he says that CEOs are fed up. Many are taking a very hard stance on employees refusing to return to office, and he's predicting a bloodbath in 2025.
You know, my question about this is that why is there such a strict need for people to return to office when companies have no problem outsourcing half their staff abroad? Anyway, let's continue.
Okay, there's a super spicy quote in this. Behind closed doors, there's a view among CEOs that they are tired of whining about coming back to work, and they feel that they've compromised enough, and if employees are not meeting the minimum, they're going to move on without them. And let's cover the fallout. So there were examples in here for professionals like Stephanie Pittman and Nathan Vance. Losing a remote job isn't just about the income. It was about realizing that remote hybrid dream might not come back. And many of them are pivoting entirely into new careers or industries as a result. So here's my point of view. The article is highlighting the shifting power dynamics in the workplace. And so while some firms are taking a very strict stance on RTO, the job market is still adapting, and we're still seeing a divide. High earners over $250,000 are starting to regain a lot of that leverage with remote roles. But for many, the options are limited, as you guys are seeing. And for employees, I would say you need to start asking yourself, is your resistance to RTO worth risking your job? If not, it's probably the right time for you to start preparing and maybe brushing up on some of those skills, pivoting industries, or even reconsidering your own stance on in-office work. And for the employers, a word of caution. Enforcing mandates without listening to employees' needs can really alienate that top talent. And flexibility is still going to be a key driver of employee loyalty.
You might end up causing a situation where a lot of people provide feedback to a certain organization, and maybe that might prevent you from getting top talent. You might just get people who are desperate for having a job, but you might end up getting rid of top talent who are really going to be productive, who bring a lot to the table. And you'll end up having a situation where you'd have a huge turnover. I think this one lady really put it well.
The craziest thing about return to office mandates to me is that they hurt the company more than they help them, and they keep doing them anyways. So when it comes to employee motivation and engagement, there are really 3 different buckets. The first is your engaged group who is really productive. They usually stay a decent amount of time. The second bucket is really our quiet quitters. They just go to work, they do their job, they go home. And the last group is so disengaged and over their employer that they are now doing more harm than good. And I say all of this because in Great Place to Work's newest survey, they found that it really didn't matter where you ended up working. It mattered that employees had control over it. So when the employer tells employees when and where they need to work, only 43% of them want to stay at their company, as opposed to when employees decide, that number goes up to 60%. What makes this really interesting is the job market is not great right now. So that means that a lot of people are kind of getting stuck at companies that they do not want to be at. Now, when you force a return to office and your employees don't really have anywhere else to go, they become these absolute menaces. And when employees are allowed to choose where they work, they are 14 times less likely to quit and stay. And as someone who works in HR, I can tell you confidently that the people that quit and stay are so much more dangerous to a company than the people who quit and actually leave.
When you decide to quit and stay, you'll tend to take a lot of shortcuts. You're not as productive. You don't take things too seriously, and you don't want that in your own organization. If you're trying to make millions in your business, you're just causing them to resent the staff, to resent the company. But it was a great, interesting point that she put out there when she mentioned that. Let's see how other people are feeling about this whole return to office, because some people will take you some shortcuts to bypass the situation.
Work for Amazon, and they're forcing us to badge in every day. So just badging in, and I'm done.
I hate that that's not actually satirical in any way, and that is one of the real techniques that Amazon and other RTO employees have used to get around the return to office mandates. The technique that Austin demonstrated in that video is called coffee badging, where you scan your badge to get in, get coffee with a couple of your coworkers, and sneak out and go home and do your actual work. Some Amazon employees, though, aren't even bothering to do that. Some of them are just giving their badges to their coworkers to scan in for them. It's a high risk, a high reward because they're not even showing up to the office. But this next one was by far my favorite until Amazon busted the employees doing it. Some employees were renaming their home Wi-Fi to match the name of the router in the office. So if management checked to see, it showed them as connected to the proper Wi-Fi. Amazon has since figured this strategy out and has cracked down on it, but it's this endless cat and mouse game between this company and its employees. There's 3 or 4 major reasons why corporations are forcing a return to office even though their employees do not want it and do not like it. And I'll make another video about that, but I'll let my boy Varun cover one of the main reasons, which is justifying middle managers.
Don't do like that. Oh, I'm sorry, King. Could you show me how to do it? Thanks, Daddy.
Continuous creativity of employees to do everything they can to circumvent the desires of the management class is a true testament to American ingenuity. I can't imagine our parents ever standing up to corporations in the way that our younger generations now have, and it gives me truly a lot of pride.
Indeed it does. But I guess the justification of middle management is interesting. Give people a reason to look over other people so that they feel important. Feel like you're glorified because of the job title, and you'll be basically having someone who does the micromanagement for a little bit of increase in the salary, and he's doing probably everything he can just to make your day miserable when things were already good and productive as they were before that. Let me know what you all think about it. Like, in case if I've missed any points, leave them down in the comments. I don't mind picking up on some things that I learned through the comments. And can some of you guys really teach me a lot of things I didn't even know?
Don't want to return to the office? How about you just ignore it? That's exactly what's happening for a large cohort of workers who, rather than kick up a fuss about returning to the office, are just pretending it isn't happening. A survey from ResumeBuilder.com spoke to over 1,000 employees whose companies have implemented a return to office policy since 2020. They found that 1 in 5 workers aren't following the policy, the majority want to be in the office 3 days a week or less, and many will quit if their companies force compliance. During the pandemic, organizations were kind of forced to give employees autonomy in how and where they work. Now they're seeing the results of that. People want to make their own schedules and do their work in the way that suits them best. So if they don't like it, they'll feel just as empowered to ignore it. And to be honest, that's what organizations should want. So why does it have to be such an issue?
So let's actually look at the comments here. My company monitor your entrance car data and pull up on it if you don't. I was pulled up because I was 1 day under the 40% over the past 12 weeks. Turned into a horrible place to work. Oh my God. They're even doing this. They're keeping track of how many times you're in, and if you're not above that certain threshold, I guess you're going to be put on a PIP. The company I worked at was fully remote, but in the past year, they quietly opened an office and started hiring people locally and eventually fired everyone remote. That's messed up. Jesus. They called us in since January. I simply said, not gonna happen, and continued to work from home. Meanwhile, my coworkers protested, but then accepted the terms and are going to the office 3 days a week. To be honest with you, like, if the job is really important to you, especially if you are like floating in debt and you have bills to pay, and you can't lose this job, I would recommend just to go ahead and do it. Go ahead and go to the work. Don't fight it. Maybe you can start looking for other roles outside of it. Look for another position that might fit your line of work, but I wouldn't risk it at all.
Here's the thing about RTO, or return to office. Of course it's great to be in the office and to collaborate with your peers, the people on your team, to have brainstorming sessions, to be able to have a drive-by, to say hello and have a coffee. The problem is every team isn't co-located together, and that was my experience with my last team. I was actually one of the only ones who was based in the Pacific Northwest at all. The closest person to me was 3 time zones away on the other side of the country. And so by forcing people to return to the office when it doesn't make sense for their team, ends up looking like this.
Empty.
Oh, there's nobody here.
Just empty places.
Empty whiteboard. Or nobody here. So that's the problem that employees are having with RTO. It doesn't make sense for everyone, and leaders shouldn't pretend like it does.
a lot of money spent to just have office spaces that are not going to be used to its full capacity. It doesn't make any sense.
You're not going to believe this, but 90% of Amazon employees are actually happy about the company's new office policy. Well, that's according to Matt Garman, CEO of Amazon Web Services, who is quoted as saying that 9 out of 10 workers were looking forward to the new policy that he spoke with. That seems to run counter to pretty much everything we're hearing both inside and outside of Amazon. Starting with the 73% of Amazon employees who now wish to leave the organization, or the 67% of US employees who have already lost employees to competitors offering hybrid or remote work this year, according to a recent study from the platform Remote. But maybe this is what Amazon wants, and doubling down harder on it is all part of their strategy. After all, other data has suggested that a quarter of executives hoped for some voluntary turnover among workers after implementing an RTO policy. What do you think? Why do you think Amazon is doing this?
Instead of having to pay people the severance, if they just automatically quit on their own, then that's a lot easier for them. It is a strategy, I can't knock it. And it also helps reduce costs. So at the end of the day, that's what companies always worried about. If you're working remote or hybrid, consider yourself very lucky, because for the people who are forced to go back into the office, and some of them are not even close to any location, it's really difficult. So count your blessings, at least for the start of the year. Let's see if things change in the new year. But if you like the video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And leave your comments down. Let me know if there's anything I missed. But other than that, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.